The book we're going to read today is The Little House by Virginia Lee Burton. And at the end of this book, I'll give you some time to collect a piece of paper and a pencil. That's all you're going to need. And then we'll learn how to draw the little house. Okay, so this is The Little House by Virginia Lee Burton. Make sure you can see. Once upon a time, there was a little house way out in the country. She was a pretty little house, and she was strong and well built. The man who built her so well said, "This little house shall never be sold for gold or silver, and she will live to see our great-great-grandchildren's great-great-grandchildren living in her." The little house was very happy as she sat on the hill and watched the countryside around her. She watched the sun rise in the morning, and she watched the sun set in the evening. Day followed day, each one a little different from the one before, but the little house stayed just the same. In the nights, she watched the moon grow from a thin new moon to a full moon, and then back again to a thin old moon. And when there was no moon, she watched the stars way off in the distance. She could see the lights of the city. The little house was curious about the city and wondered what it would be like to live there. So you can tell back here, it's nighttime, but you can see some light in the background. So that must be where the city is at. Time passed quickly for the little house as she watched the countryside slowly change with the seasons. In the spring, when the days grew longer and the sun warmer, she waited for the first robin to return from the south. She watched the grass turn green, she watched the buds on the trees swell, and the apple trees burst into blossom. She watched the children playing in the brook. This is the season that we're in right now, spring. So we might see some of these things too. All the birds returning from the south because it's no longer cold. The grass is turning green, especially with all the rain we've been having lately. And more people are just outside enjoying the weather. In the long summer days, she sat in the sun and watched the trees cover themselves with leaves, and the white daisies cover the hill. She watched the gardens grow, and she watched the apples turn red and ripen. She watched the children swimming in the pool. So that's the next season coming up for us. It'll probably be hotter. Hopefully we'll get to do more swimming. In the fall, when the days grew shorter and the nights colder, she watched the first frost turn the leaves to bright yellow and orange and red. She watched the harvest gathered and the apples picked. She watched the children going back to school. So most of us will hopefully be returning to school in the fall too. So during this season, once we start to see some changes. In the winter, when the nights were long and the days short, and the countryside covered with snow, she watched the children, coasting and skating. Year followed year. The apple trees grew old, and the new ones were planted. The children grew up and went away to the city. And now at night, the lights of the city seemed brighter and closer. Looks like something's changing. You can see the sky isn't so clear and blue like it was on the other pages. I wonder what that could be. One day, the little house was surprised to see a horseless carriage coming down the winding country road. Pretty soon there were more of them on the road and fewer carriages pulled by horses. Pretty soon along came some surveyors and surveyed a line in front of the little house. Pretty soon along came a steam shovel and dug a road through the hill covered with daisies. Then some trucks came and dumped big stones on the road. Then some trucks with little stones. Then some trucks with tar and sand. And finally a steamroller came and rolled it all smooth, and the road was done. That's a lot of steps to create a road. You have to get the steam shovel to dig it up, Spread some big rocks on it, spread some little rocks on it, some dirt, and then the tar to make it smooth. And then here comes a steamroller in the back, making it all smoothed out. Now the little house watched the trucks and automobiles going back and forth to the city. Gasoline stations, roadside stands, and small houses followed the new road. Everyone and everything moved much faster now than before. Wow, so you can see that's a big difference from where we started at in the beginning. Let's just take a look. So here we are in the summer. You can see all these rolling hills. There's not very many houses, just a few. And now look, it's changed quite a bit. Wonder what's gonna happen. More roads were made, and the countryside was divided into lots. More houses and bigger houses, apartment houses and tenement houses. Schools, stores, and garages spread all over the land and crowded around the little house. No one wanted to live in her and take care of her anymore. She couldn't be sold for gold or silver, so she just stayed there and watched. Now that's an even bigger change. Now the houses are getting taller. So they're no longer just small little homes like our little house. Now they're apartment buildings, garages. I can see the skies changing too. I predict that that's probably pollution. Remember, pollution is really bad for the air. Do you remember where pollution comes from? There's a big clue in the picture. All of these cars. Now it was not so quiet and peaceful at night. Now the lights of the city were bright and very close, and the street lights shone all night. This must be living in the city, thought the little house, and didn't know whether she liked it or not. She missed the field of daisies and the apple trees dancing in the moonlight. Pretty soon there were trolley cars going back and forth in front of the little house. They went back and forth all day and part of the night. Everyone seemed to be very busy, and everyone seemed to be in a hurry. So that's just kind of what the city's like now. And look, now there's huge skyscrapers in the back. It's definitely a city now. Pretty soon there was an elevated train going back and forth above the little house. The air was filled with dust and smoke, and the noise was so loud that it shook the little house. Now she couldn't tell when spring came, or summer, or fall, or winter. It all seemed about the same. And you can tell there's even changes, even though there's changes going on around the little house, there's also changes going on with our little house. You can see the grass is no longer green. She's not as brightly painted because no one's living there, so no one's taking care of her. Pretty soon there was a subway going back and forth underneath the little house. She couldn't see it, but she could feel and hear it. People were moving faster and faster. No one noticed the little house anymore. They hurried by without a glance. Oh boy, that must be really overwhelming for the little house. She's got something under her, noise under her, noise over her, noise all around her. It's just a lot of things going on. I know whenever I go to the city, and when I was living in the city, actually, it was pretty overwhelming. Everyone was just in a rush. Pretty soon they tore down the apartment houses and tenement houses around the little house and started digging big cellars, one on each side. The steam shovels dug down 3 stories on one side and 4 stories on the other side. Pretty soon they started building up. They built up 25 stories on one side and 35 stories on the other. So stories is just another word for floors. So a building with 35 floors, that's huge. And that could be an apartment building, that could be offices, who knows. Now the little house only saw the sun at noon and didn't see the moon or stars at night at all, because the lights of the city were too bright. She didn't like living in the city. At night she used to dream of the country and the field of daisies and the apple trees dancing in the moonlight. The little house was very sad and lonely. Her paint was cracked and dirty, her windows were broken, and her shutters hung crookedly. She looked shabby, though she was just as good a house as ever underneath. There she is. Broken windows. There's an X on her door because no one's living there. It's really sad. I hope something changes. Then, one fine morning in spring, along came the great-great-granddaughter of the man who built the little house so well. She saw the shabby little house, but she didn't hurry by. There was something about the little house that made her stop and look again. So shabby just means like not well taken care of, just kind of run down, kind of dirty. She said to her husband, "That little house looks just like the little house my grandmother lived in when she was a little girl. Only that little house was way out in the country, on a hill covered with daisies and apple trees growing around." Seems like something might be changing now. She remembers, even though things look different. They found out it was the same house, so they went to the movers to see if the little house could be moved. The movers looked the little house all over and said, "Sure, this house is as good as ever. She's built so well we could move her anywhere." So they jacked up the little house and put her on wheels. Traffic was held up for hours as they slowly moved her out of the city. So that's actually something that people do sometimes. Some houses you can actually take from out of the ground, put them on a big trailer, and move them elsewhere. I've seen it before and it's wild. It's pretty crazy. So I wonder where they're going to take her. At first, the little house was frightened, but after she got used to it, she rather liked it. They rolled along the big road and they rolled along the little roads until they were way out in the country. When the little house saw the green grass and heard the birds singing, she didn't feel sad anymore. They went along and along, but they couldn't seem to find just the right place. They tried the little house here and they tried her there. Finally, they saw a little hill in the middle of a field and apple trees growing around. "There," said the great-great-granddaughter. "That's just the place." "Yes, it is," said the little house to herself. A cellar was dug on top of the hill, and slowly they moved the house from the road to the hill. Just like the hill that she started on in the beginning. And it looks like, just by looking at the picture, it looks like it's probably spring again, because I notice the birds, I notice the apple trees, they have flowers on them, so they don't have apples yet. So something you might not know about apples is that they actually bloom into a flower first, and then when the flower gets enough nutrients, it starts to turn into an apple. So that's kind of what gives me a clue. Also, because the grass, it isn't really, really dark green like it is during the summer. It's kind of light green, so that gives me a clue that it's spring again. The windows and shutters were fixed, and once again they painted her a lovely shade of pink. As the little house settled down on her new foundation, she smiled happily. Once again she could watch the sun and moon and stars. Once again she could watch spring and summer and fall and winter come and go. Once again she was lived in and taken care of. And she looks happy to me. Even though houses don't have faces, I like that she kind of has the little step right here and it looks like a smile. And her windows are the eyes. And her nose is the door. So cute. Never again would she be curious about the city. Never again would she want to live there. The stars twinkled above her. A new moon was coming up. It was spring. See, I was right. And all was quiet and peaceful in the country. The end. So now, if you want to pause the video so you can go grab a piece of paper, you'll also need a pencil and an eraser. Or if your pencil already has an eraser attached to it, that's fine too. Or if you just want to use a marker, whatever you want to use to draw. I'm going to use a black marker so that way you're able to see what I'm doing. All right, so you can pause the video here, and then when you come back, you can get started. Now I'm going to move this closer so we can get started. That looks pretty good. All right, so the first decision you're going to have to make is what way do you want your paper to go? So you can have it go landscape, this is called landscape, or you can have it go vertical, up and down. So side to side or up and down. It's your choice. I think I'm gonna put mine side to side, like this, landscape. And you don't need tape, but I'm just gonna tape mine up here so that way it doesn't move. Okay, so the first part that we're gonna draw is the actual little house. So houses are pretty easy to draw. We're gonna try to make ours, I'm gonna try to draw mine at least to look like the little house. So it looks like here we start with a trapezoid, and then we have a rectangle, two squares, a little rectangle on the top, and then a big curve for the door. Okay, and then maybe we'll give her a little smile too. All right, so first step, you can put your house anywhere on your piece of paper. I'll draw mine pretty big. You can draw yours small, since it is called the little house, but maybe I want to make mine a big house. You're the artist, so you get to decide what you want your house to look like. So first what we're going to do is draw the trapezoid. So we start with a line on top, two lines that go diagonal down, like that, and then we're going to connect this side to the other side, just like that. And if you need to pause the video to catch up, then you can do that and then go at your own pace. All right, so next we'll need to draw a rectangle. That's going to be her face. So we take two lines down like that, and then a big line across to connect. And then we can add a little windows, and those are just squares. Or you can make yours circles, or maybe even triangle windows. I mean, you're the artist, so you get to make the choice. And then we have a door, almost like we're drawing an upside down U. And then we have the little chimney at the top, which is just almost like a little rectangle at the top. Okay. And then I remember she has shutters. So we're going to add the shutters. Remember, shutters are just little pieces of wood that you can close on your windows from the outside. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to add little rectangles inside the squares like that. And then to make sure that we know that they're shutters, we're going to add some little lines as decoration. I think you can see that here. I'll bring it closer. See, I just added just little lines, so it kind of looks like shutters. And then her roof is scalloped. That just means we're drawing a bunch of little U's, or maybe like W's. So you just go down, up, go all the way across. It's called scalloped. See how they're kind of like the letter U? So if I know all of you can draw the letter U, so I know you all can do this. Because I wouldn't give you something hard or challenging to do. Maybe this is a little bit challenging, but the more you practice, the better you'll get. That's the great thing about drawing. It doesn't have to be perfect. There we go. There's a little house. And if you want to add the smile, maybe I will. She's got just a little step that comes out right there. And she's got a little sidewalk, but we'll get to that. And then we need to draw the foundation, which is just those little shapes right there. And it looks like a crisscross. So I'll take you closer so you can see how I did that. So it's just kind of drawing X's. So we draw one X, and then two X's, three X's. Okay, there's our little house. So now our little house needs to live somewhere. So remember in the story, she lived on a hill. So we're gonna draw a hill. So your hill can be small, it can be tall, it can be big. You're the artist, so you get to decide. I'm gonna make my hill go all the way off the edges of the page because I want to make some room for the trees. So you just make a decision, choose one line, go off the page, the other line goes off the page. And then there's a little road or a little sidewalk that leads up to our little house. So that's where we're gonna add it right here. And we're just gonna add a curved line. One line. Another line. There's our little house on the hill. Now, you can add anything you want in the background. In the story, remember before the city came, so you can either decide to draw the buildings in the background if you like how that looked in the story. Here, I'll show you. Because some of them are really interesting. So maybe you want big buildings in the background like that. Maybe you like the page where there were a bunch of other houses around. Now I'm not going to draw all of this because that would take me quite a long time. I think my favorite part was probably the fall scene. So I'll show you how to add some hills in the background. So if you want to add hills in the background, the hills get smaller as we go further back. So maybe I draw a small hill back here, and you can start drawing it from anywhere really. Maybe I even draw some smaller ones back here. There's kind of bumps. You see that? And then if you're drawing things that are further away, they are also smaller. So if I wanted to draw a few, maybe I want to draw another little house back here. Maybe it's one of her neighbors. I can draw the house however I want, but it's going to be a lot smaller than our little house here. And since we just learned how to draw this little house, you can use the same shapes to make the other houses in the background. And maybe I'll put that one on a small hill too. Okay. And then you can draw the apple trees that are in the story. First, the trunk of an apple tree, you see how it's kind of like curved and swirly, and then we just have the puffy leaves there. So it's pretty easy to draw. There's no wrong way to do it. So you just kind of have a swirly line. That's your trunk. Maybe you have some other branches going off. And then you're going to add almost like a cloud shape. And you can add multiple cloud shapes because there's lots of, this will make it look puffier. Or you can draw how any kind of tree that you want. Maybe I'll draw another tree here. circles in this one. And there you go. And if you want to draw any other details, like maybe you want to draw some animals, or maybe you want to draw some people in your yard, you can think about the background. If you want to draw some roads or some more houses, you can add the sun in the background. You are the artist and you make the choices. And then once you're done, you can color it in with whatever you want. So I might use markers on this, I might use watercolor or crayons. So that is how you draw the little house from the book, The Little House by Virginia Lee Burton. Here we have our happy little house. Thank you again for joining me today, and I'll see you soon. Bye.